This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
All right, well, this might be the least fun two-game portion of rewatch we've done yet. That doesn't mean it's going to be the least fun podcast. I actually think, in a way, it could be a fun podcast, because I think we're both going to have some very passionate feelings about what we just watched. But Stroz, I was curious, we talked about it last week, about how the rewatch in this season would feel. Because 2011, a lot of good memories, successful season, you know, like, I think a lot of nostalgic feelings about 2011. 2012, not so much. And dude, I feel exhausted. Like, I only watched one game today. I watched one yesterday, I watched one today. But like, to be emotionally invested in games that you know are losses is more tiring than being emotionally invested in live games. But I am. Like, it's hard. Like, I don't know about you. Do you find yourself, because now we are 23 games deep in a rewatch. Don't you find yourself, like, getting invested in these old teams?
Oh, dude, every single week. There are points where I'm just throwing my hands up in the air. I'm exasperated. I'm yelling at the TV. It's like reliving it all over again. And I already know what the outcome is. I know what's going to happen.
Like, I don't always know the score going in, but I know if it's a win or a loss. And like, I don't think we do a pretty good job of staying within the game we're critiquing. And today we're going to be talking about the loss to Tennessee 44-41 in overtime on the road in week 3. And then a loss at home against Minnesota 20-13. But I'm just going to, like, before we jump into the Tennessee game, say they had no business losing either of these games.
Nope.
And I don't mean, like, a freak play. I mean, talent-wise, this team should be 3-1 with only a loss against San Francisco, who went on to play in the Super Bowl. And we both were relatively unimpressed in the way they played against San Francisco. But at the end of the day, they still only lost by one possession against the eventual Super Bowl winner on the road in prime time. Like, eventually this team loses a bunch of games in a row. I don't know what happened, but at this point in the season, this team has no business being 1-3.
I think the thing I took out of both of these games, because they should not have lost either one of these games, was how critical different mistakes come back to bite this team in the butt. I mean, the Tennessee game, the week 3 game versus Tennessee, they had numerous opportunities to put this game away. And then they find themselves in a gigantic hole. And then they come back, like the resiliency of this team in this game to fight and claw back. And then to eventually blow this game the way that they blew it. And I don't want to give it away yet because we're going to talk about it. But the way they end up losing this game, I wanted to punch my computer. I was so pissed off at what happened. And I ended up texting you, like the moment it was over, I was like, yeah, just wait for this Tennessee game. And you were like, I already watched it. And like,
I didn't even say anything else.
So upset.
I didn't even say anything else. I literally said I watched it. Like, this game, honestly, I think the Titans game was less frustrating because at least there were scores.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a lot of notes from this game, and I thought that it was entertaining in that sense. There were a lot of notes. The next game, I'm just gonna jump into this game, get into it, because, like, I just finished watching the Minnesota game, like, an hour ago, so I'm like, emotional about that one currently. One early note I had is, there's no doubt, one thing that young Stafford does is throw catchable passes that get his wide receivers murdered.
Yeah.
And that definitely played a role in how beat up Calvin Johnson was throughout his career. It made me wonder, and I'd love to go back and look at this at some point. I meant to do it today, I forgot. I wonder if any quarterback has been as benefited in their career from the defenseless receiver rule. Because a lot of these, like, he's throwing passes that today, the hits that his receivers are taking would be 15-yard penalties. Because they're getting blown up while they're in the air, which you just can't do anymore. Like, you have to wait till guys land. And even then, like, you gotta let them turn their head and be facing you too. This isn't a huge critique on Stafford. Some of them were. But I think some of these, it's like he's just gotta put the ball somewhere.
You know, I'm glad you bring this up because if you remember the way Calvin Johnson left the Detroit Lions, it was bad. It wasn't good. And it seemed like there was some bad blood between him and Stafford. It didn't seem like they had left on the best terms.
I don't think that's fair.
I'm not gonna say it was horrible, but it didn't seem like it was as rosy as it probably should have been. And I think the point that you're making here might speak to some of that. I mean, Calvin talked about when he left the Lions. My body's beat up, everything hurts, he's got mangled fingertips, and you're right. What young Stafford does to his receivers is put them in basically a kill zone where it leaves these guys open for shots, and they just take body blow after body blow, and it becomes hard to get up, man. It becomes really, really hard. And I think you're right. It is I think it's young Stafford trying to make a play, right? I've got to put the ball somewhere. I've got a receiver here who could probably catch that. And the thing that is amazing about Calvin Johnson, watching him at this point in his career, he's amazing. He had 2 or 3 catches in both of these games where I was like, damn, that's a dog-ass catch by just a savage wide receiver.
I actually wrote that note. I believe it was in the end zone. He had just gotten Calvin murdered.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say in the end zone, and he dropped it. I'm not 100% sure about that. But then the following play, he gave the ball to Brandon Pettigrew, and it looked like Pettigrew could have had it, but pulled up out of fear of getting himself lit up. And it was on a crucial third down, led to an early turnover. This is before this game got going because 46 total points were scored in the fourth quarter. It felt like a crucial moment at the time. I don't know if it ended up being as crucial. I mean, the Lions settled for field goals. They had 9 points before they put their first touchdown on the board. Field goal after field goal after field goal, which I believe was the theme in San Francisco as well. I had a lot of Brandon Pettigrew complaints, particularly in game 2. But it's funny because the way I'll save my game 2 thoughts on Brandon Pettigrew for game 2. But in game 1, I wrote, I genuinely don't mean to insult Pettigrew. This is how I started this. But I think some people, no matter what they do, they just can't be focused all the time. Like, even if they love their job, like, they just struggle to be focused all the time. And Stafford had a play in this game, another third down, where he bought time running, and it looked like maybe he could have picked up the first down with his feet, but the guy guarding Pettigrew stepped up to guard Stafford. Instead, Stafford just soft shovel pass to Brandon Pettigrew, hit him right in the frickin' hands, and just falls to the ground. And it was just like, very blatant. Brandon Pettigrew was prepared for Stafford to take off. Brandon Pettigrew wasn't going to block anybody. Brandon Pettigrew wasn't going to catch that ball. He wasn't going to do anything. In his mind, the play was over. If Stafford throws that ball earlier, I think Pettigrew catches it. But like, he's done. And like, I'm not trying to hate on Pettigrew for that guy, for that play, because I understand it. Like, it sucks at the highest level. You can't be doing that. But like, I get it. Like, I think we've all been there where we just like didn't expect our number to be called, whether it's in sports or anything else in life, and then it is, and you fail because of it. But like, I feel like Brandon Pettigrew has a lot of these moments, and he has a lot of them in crucial situations where like, Stafford does a great job to create something, and Brandon Pettigrew just isn't there mentally.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate, because that specific play, you're right, he just kind of checks out, and I think there's a couple other plays where it's just, he's not focused, he's not dialed in. I mean, he ends up catching a ball, and he gets it stripped from him. And it's just, if you watch the play, he's just lazy about trying to tuck the ball away. And
that play should have put the game away. And that play should have put the game away, because the Titans were up a touchdown with what? Was it like 3 or 4 minutes left?
Yep. And
it happened so fast, it looks like it's almost an interception. I don't know what they ruled it. Did they rule it an interception? No, they didn't. They ruled it a fumble.
No, it was a fumble.
But Stafford's leading a comeback drive to tie up the game in the fourth quarter. Pettigrew gets the ball just taken right out of his hands, goes back the other way uncontested. Oh,
and Matt Stafford ends up pulling up lame after that play. Trying to get
done for the game.
Yeah, trying to get to the defender who stripped the ball from Pettigrew. Stafford ends up pulling up lame. Thankfully, he's able to go into the Minnesota game, which is the following week. But you then put Shaun Hill in a really precarious situation, and Shaun Hill does a fantastic job.
We were spoiled. We were spoiled as Lions fans during this era with the backup quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Shaun Hill, it's hard to really remember, but I remember every time he came in, Shaun Hill probably was a top 32 quarterback at this point in the league. Now very, very bottom of that top 32, and an older guy, so understandable why he didn't have a starting job. But like, when he came in, like, you knew you were gonna get a player who'd give you a chance. Now, you didn't expect him to come back and tie the game in 3 minutes, down 2 touchdowns. But you didn't think the game was over just because Shaun Hill came in.
In a very limited time, Shaun Hill might have outperformed Matt Stafford. And then again, we're only talking 2 drives here. He only had 2 drives. But in that timeline, 3 drives, because he had that overtime drive. But in
I
that
struggle
time,
with that. I get where you're coming from. I don't have a major issue with it, but Stafford had 9 incompletions on 40 passes.
Right.
But Shaun Hill did play very well in the time he had.
I mean,
let me say this.
You're right. We were spoiled with the backup quarterback.
Let me say this. If Stafford led that comeback, what you would have been saying is prevent defense. Because Shaun Hill led it, you're saying he played better than Stafford. And I don't, can you be honest here? You agree, right? If it was Stafford, you'd be saying prevent defense.
I probably would be saying prevent defense, but it was amazing. It was amazing
fair.
to me. It was amazing to me to watch a guy come in cold. Shaun Hill came in cold.
No, it was impressive.
And led a drive to get this team down the field, score a touchdown, and then he chucked the ball 50 yards for the game tying touchdown to force.
You remember that play, right?
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, it was just amazing to me to watch this guy perform at such a high level, just coming off the bench. And again, poor Matt Stafford throws a nice pass to Brandon Pettigrew, who is just lazy. It's just laziness. It's just a guy, like you said, not being dialed in and just being ho-hum and not protecting the ball and getting it stripped and watching guys run back the other way for a score.
But that's been a story of this podcast, is Pettigrew was so crucial. And I mean, Pettigrew had 60 yards and 8 receptions in this one. He was so crucial, but it was frustrating, the struggles he had. But I was done with him after the Minnesota game. I tweeted it. After watching the Minnesota game, I didn't ever want to see Brandon Pettigrew play another snap. I'm really upset. I have to watch Brandon Pettigrew play all year. That's how emotionally invested I am. I'm just done with him. And to be honest, he deserves that in this one because of that fumble, because of a couple drops. He had 8 receptions, but he was targeted 12 times. At least a couple of those were drops. Can we talk about Mikel LaShore?
Dude, I was blown away at how much love he got in this game and how early they went to him. It was a concerted effort to get this dude the ball.
Was this the first game of his career?
Yes. First game of his career. There was a point where I was like, are they going to bring Kevin Smith in at all? Is Kevin Smith going to get a touch? No,
Kevin done for the season.
He might be done for the season.
Because Joique Bell got 5 touches.
There was no Kevin Smith in this game or next week.
Yeah, I think he might be done for the season. Or if he comes back, he's very, very limited. I thought early on in the game, I was watching Mikel LaShore and I didn't remember Kevin Smith being this good, and I was going, I don't remember Mikel LaShore being this good. He lost his efficiency as he got deeper into the game. He only finished with 3.8 yards per carry, which is not good enough. Early on, though, it felt like the running game was there for them. I don't know what happened. It definitely disappeared as the game went on. I just couldn't believe the combination of 30 touches, and that's not any, sometimes we're rounding up. No, he had 26 carries and 4 receptions. And I think he's the leading running back in almost every game this season the rest of the way, if not every game. I think what happened is he had so much success running the ball early that they leaned on him a little bit too heavy late. I did take one note. I thought they got way too cute on 3rd down. They had 2 screens and a fake fullback dive pitch, all on short, 3rd and 2 or shorter. I have good things to say about my memories of Jim Schwartz. I hope this doesn't happen. This rewatch, and he's obviously not the offensive mastermind of this team, but this rewatch could change the way I look back on Jim Schwartz, because there was definitely coaching issues in this game. And on defense, Jake freaking Locker. How long did it take you to realize Jake Locker was the quarterback of the Titans?
I think it was in the 2nd quarter, and I was like, really? Jake Locker's chewing these guys apart?
So I was trying to figure out who it was. I thought it was Matt Hasselbeck. I was 1 year off. He was their 2011 starter. I thought it was Matt Hasselbeck. He was clearly way too fast. I gotta say, I don't remember Jake Locker being as fast as he was. He broke off a 35-yard run, or 31-yard run, and he was just taking on. But yeah. Jake Locker carving up a Jim Schwartz defense with Kenny Britt, Kendall Wright, and Nate Washington.
Don't forget Jared Cook.
Craig Stevens had 5 receptions, and I thought he was like a cook at Denny.
Craig Stevens?
Did Craig Stevens play 2 NFL seasons?
Maybe.
I'm looking up Craig Stevens right now, and the first name that comes up is an American film actor from 1958.
Look, what I will say is this. What I'll say is this defense did a really good job containing Chris Johnson, but I mean, goodness, Jake Locker and this hodgepodge of wide receivers killed this team.
Stroz, listen to this. So Craig Stevens actually had a decent career. He lasted, from 2008 to 2015 with the Titans. In 2008, he had 1 reception. In 2009, he had 0. In 2010, bust onto the scene with 11. 2011, he has 9 receptions. 2023, he has a whopping 23 receptions. He had 5 against the Lions. This man had 60 career receptions, and he had 10% of them against the Lions in this game.
This guy was a Lions killer.
I just, this passing offense, and to be fair, Chris Johnson, who didn't have a good game by any means. Chris Johnson, elite running back, but somehow this team gave up 60 rushing yards and 380 passing yards. This is honestly, this could be, if you just ran this by anybody, true or false, Jake Locker threw for 380 yards with his leading wide receiver being Nate Washington. Detroit fans would all say true because we've seen this happen too many times, but nobody would believe that. This has to be Jake Locker's best career game.
I mean, you could make the argument. Look, almost 380 yards throwing. He looked amazing in this game, really and truly. Fantasy-wise, right? Fantasy-wise, this guy had to be top 5, top 10 for the day.
I want to say this. You say he looked amazing. We talk all the time about how the Lions make players look good. And sometimes they do. Sometimes I think guys actually look good playing the Lions. I didn't think Jake Locker looked good. I think Jake Locker looked like a bad quarterback practicing against the high school defense. He still had a bunch of incompletions, and it was because he played a terrible game. Jake Locker sucked, and he still threw for 380 yards.
I just think the secondary is that bad. The secondary is so poor on this team. And there's a ton of poor tackling that leads to touchdowns. There's a lot of penalties by this defense. And I think a lot of it comes from this secondary is just a hodgepodge of guys who aren't good enough to be in the league.
I hate pushing storylines too far. I think it's a thing you do, but I'm not a fan of it. But I think it's worth at least mentioning in the Minnesota game, one of the commentators says, probably the color guy, I don't know who it was, said that Jim Schwartz had mentioned in 2011, the Lions played with the edge of nobody respects us. And in 2012, that edge was gone. I hate storylines that they didn't care enough. That's usually garbage. But I think it's fair to ask because they couldn't play, this Titans game, the Titans sucked and the Lions got their ass kicked. And the same thing happened in Minnesota, which we'll get to. They gave up 2 special teams touchdowns in this one too, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Special teams in these 2 games, special teams was absolutely horrible. And if I remember correctly, because they have a week 5 bye, I think going into week 6, they changed whoever their special teams coordinator is because it was absolutely atrocious. I mean, your special teams defense gives up 2 touchdowns this game and next game.
Their current special teams coordinator still is in the league today as a special teams coordinator.
That's crazy.
Isn't that incredible?
It's crazy. It just the reusing of coaches in the NFL blows my mind.
I think it's worth pointing out. I don't want to jump too far into the next game. There was a punt return for a touchdown in the next game with 6 missed tackles. There's only 11 guys on the field. You can't as a coach. I just don't know what you do when more than half the players on the field are in position but can't make a tackle. I haven't even really been using my notes on this game. This is just memorable. Jacob Lacey, who I think we made fun of because we didn't know who the hell he was in the offseason episode, gave up a top 5 most embarrassing touchdown I've ever seen. And
was it Nate Washington's where he picked the ball over his back and then ran it for 70 some yards?
Imagine the David Tyree catch. Except after the catch, the cornerback couldn't figure out where the ball was, and David Tyree took off to the end zone.
He's just spinning around like a top.
He caught it behind Jacob Lacey's head, and then he ran the rest of the way. Dude, he was hugging you to make the catch. How could you not tackle him? And I think that was a touchdown that put the Titans up 7 before the Pettigrew fumble.
Yep.
In the fourth quarter. I've seen some embarrassing Lions touchdowns. I remember a few years before this, the Patriots had a touchdown on Thanksgiving. I want to say Deion Branch, but maybe that's too old. Maybe someone younger than that. Whoever the wide receiver was for the Patriots literally just zigzagged left and right for 30 yards, and the corner couldn't figure out how to tackle him. Aside from that one, this might have been the most embarrassing touchdown I've ever seen allowed.
Yeah, when it happened, I was like, man, like, cause I remember Nate Washington. I remember Nate Washington, cause I think right around this time, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years earlier, I started playing a lot of fantasy football. And Nate Washington was always like that wide receiver you could just kind of pick up off of free agency. And like, you needed a guy, and he was a cool flex play, always.
No. And he wasn't a cool flex play. He was the, like, at least I'll get 4 points flex play.
Yes, exactly. And in this game, I just remember like, man, Nate Washington just killing the Lions. And this was just a BS play, man. It goes over the top of him, picks the ball, and just goes uncontested for 71 yards while the defensive back is just spinning around somewhere near midfield. It was unreal. It was unreal watching this play. And I was pissed. I'm pressing so hard in my notebook as I'm taking notes, and I'm angry, and I'm like slapping my notebook on my thigh, and I'm just like screaming at the TV as this is unfolding, and I'm like way too invested in these games that I already know what the outcome is, and it happened 8 years ago. Why am I this upset? There's no reason.
See, there are some games, even in losses, where like, because I'm invested, there are some games where I'm proud of things I see. Like, I came out of, to be honest with you, both of these games feeling relatively strongly about Stafford. I don't think he was perfect in either one, but in a year where so far nobody showed up, I thought he showed up in both these games. I'm going to go ahead and speculate. I think Jake Locker, Nate Washington, and Craig Stevens all had the single best games of their career in this game.
I think it's very close. It might be very close.
I wrote this in here. We could pass this note along the next game. I said the offsides in this era were insane. Multiple times, especially in this game. In this game, there were at least 3 offsides where more than one Lion jumped. Like, yeah. I gotta say it. I think with Jim Caldwell, this Lions team is at least 7-8 win team.
Oh, I would agree.
They were more disciplined.
They were much more disciplined. The discipline on this team was not there. And look, I think both of us like Jim Schwartz, right? I like Jim Schwartz a lot. You like Jim Schwartz a lot. But the lack of discipline by this defense was unreal. Unreal.
Do you have any more notes? I think let me tell you, the tone is not going to change a whole lot going into next week. I'm actually going to be more negative. Do you have any more notes?
What did you think about the way this game ended, right? So, the team's down 41-27 with a minute 16 left. You've got your backup quarterback who comes in, and Shaun Hill ends up hitting Calvin Johnson, with 18 seconds left for a touchdown. They recover the onside kick. He chucks a 50-yarder to send them into overtime, right? And you have the Tennessee Titans basically march down the field and kick a field goal. So the Lions have a chance to rebuttal. And the Lions, I think, are on, I want to say it's like the 17-yard line, maybe the 15-yard line. And it's a 4th and 1. And you do a QB sneak with your backup quarterback on a 4th and 1. You thought it was the right call?
100% thought it was the right call. 100%. Jake Locker has been tearing apart your defense. I have no reason to believe you're going to hold them, because if you kick the field goal, Tennessee gets the ball back, and now a field goal wins the game.
Right, no, for sure.
I have no reason to believe that you're capable of stopping Jake Locker from scoring. You're only 15 yards from the end zone. I am not taking my chances. 4th and 5, I kick the field goal. 4th and 1, you go for I think it was literally the perfect call.
Why not go with either Joik Bell or Mikel LeSure in that spot? Why go QB sneak? My issue was the QB sneak.
Because QB sneaks are more efficient.
The QB sneak, I just did not get.
Do you think Joik Bell picks up 1 yard more often than a QB sneak? Because I don't.
Yes.
I think a 1 yard QB sneak, I think you pick that up 70% of the time.
I think the way Mikel LeSure was fading in this game, you lean on Joik Bell and you just let him bruise his way to get that 1 yard.
No, there's way too much hindsight in there. Joik Bell was an undrafted free agent who had very limited proof that he was going to be anything at this point. I mean, if you disagree with the call, I'm fine with that, but I don't think it's a knock. I thought going for it was 100% the right choice.
Going for it's fine, but not leaning on your running backs didn't make any sense to me. Yeah, you could go Mikel LeShore and I would be okay with it. You could go George Bell and I'd be okay with it.
Anything else?
I did not like Shaun Hill going with the QB sneak. No, I think I'm pretty good. I think we touched on just about everything. Oh, what about Jason
Kelvin
Hansen?
Was stopped at the 2, by the way. Kelvin was stopped at the 2 on a catch in this game, by the way.
Yes. That's going to be a theme. I'm telling you, it's going to be a theme throughout the season. What about Jason Hansen? Jason Hansen had to do double duty in this game.
And he had a punt that was stopped inside the 10. I think he only punted once because they had the punter. He got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think his only punt was stopped inside the 10-yard line. He did then follow up a kickoff and send it out of bounds. But the punt was impressive. I
was just impressed. This guy can do it all. And he's like 42 this season. Who's your dud? Let's go dud. I wonder if we're going to have the same dud.
Well, I mean, I think the easy answer, I think we're probably not because I'm passing up the easy answer. And full disclosure, I made these decisions before I watched the Vikings game. Mm-hmm. My dud was Brandon Pettigrew. I was just very disappointed. This was the I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed game in Brandon Pettigrew. Things change a little bit next week. But I was very disappointed. There's a lot of things, like some games you can point to like 1 or 2 plays that if they happen differently, you win. I think Brandon Pettigrew had several of those himself in this game. And because I watched it yesterday, I don't remember them all off the top of my head. I know he dropped a touchdown. I know he had a fumble ripped out of his hands that extended the lead to 14. He just sucked.
I'm gonna go Brandon Pettigrew too, man. I can't argue with it.
I thought your answer was gonna be special teams.
No, I mean, special teams were horrible. But I'm gonna put this on Brandon Pettigrew because he had a ton of drop passes. He had a drop touchdown, and then he had the strip for a touchdown going the other way. Brandon Pettigrew might have played, I want to say maybe his worst game of his career as a Detroit Lions.
Oh, he's got a lot of those. Let's scale back. I think it's the most disappointing.
You're right. He has had a ton of those.
I think it's the most disappointing game. I think what we can fairly do is say it is the most disappointing game he has played that we have watched yet. And that is a 21 game sample size of 17 is 21 game sample size. I think it's the worst game he's played. He had some bad ones in 2011 too. But in this one, like, I think if Brandon Pettigrew shows up, the Lions win this game.
Yep.
I mean, if you don't give up 2 special teams touchdowns, I mean, think about it. They gave away 21 points. 2 special teams touchdowns, and Brandon Pettigrew just gave the ball to a corner. Actually, no, I'm gonna count the Nate Washington touchdown. The Titans didn't earn any points, man. The Titans were just given points on easy plays. What an atrocious game. They had no business. They had no business losing either of these games. The Lions should have blown out Tennessee.
Yep.
This should have been a 40-20 win.
You know what? I wish we could somehow get whatever the line was going back to this game.
I'm sorry. I've been interrupting you a lot today. We have not spent this much time on a single game in this podcast history. We're 30 minutes deep right now, and we haven't even gotten to the second game.
I mean, like, this game was that atrocious. I mean, I want to go back and I wish we could get the whatever the betting line was, because I want to know how favored Detroit was going into this game, because on paper, they're arguably the better team. And like, you said it yourself, there's no reason they should have lost this game. There's no reason. And they blew it. They absolutely blew it. So stud, you could go Mikel LeShore, you could go Shaun Hill, you could go Jason Hansen. I could just throw a dart at any one of these guys and I could give them the nod for stud. I'm gonna go Shaun Hill because I was impressed at his ability to come off the bench cold and lead 2 drives to help get this team into overtime. He was arguably the reason that they ended up losing this game, because he ended up fumbling the snap trying to get the QB sneak on the 4th and 1, but I'm gonna go Shaun Hill in this game.
I don't even consider Shaun Hill. I like that one. I disagree with Mikel LeShore. Started very strong. Ultimately, 26 carries for 100 yards, not good enough. I went Calvin Johnson, 10 receptions, 160 yards. He had a hell of a season, but no touchdowns. I mean, obviously not 0, but very few. Did get a touchdown in this one. I didn't ever get to it, but I had a note on this game too. As a season ticket holder in this era, I remember an event where we got to interact with players. and Nate Burleson said he signed in Detroit. Again, this is the fans, so this isn't like anything official. But he said he signed in Detroit to play with Calvin Johnson because, who better to play next to than Calvin Johnson? And I thought Nate Burleson in this game got the benefit of Calvin. In fact, I remember, I wrote that note after watching a play where Nate Burleson lines up in the slot next to Calvin Johnson, and there are two corners on Calvin and nobody guarding Nate Burleson. Don't know if it's by design or a miscommunication or what, but literally Nate Burleson had a 10-yard catch, completely uncontested because of Calvin Johnson. I thought he had a great game.
Yeah, Nate Burleson in this game, 10 receptions on 12 targets. And Nate played a really good game. Nate was was he the reason that they ended up, I think, getting in position to tie this game?
All right, moving on to the game that's literally making me, I feel my chest tightening as I look at the box score. The Lions lose 20-13 at Minnesota, and every single person on this team deserves to be fired. This game was unacceptable. I don't have anything good to say. Stroz, do you ever watch a Lions game and you just feel like the team didn't show up, so I don't want to show up? I don't really even want to talk about it. Not even out of anger. Just out of I don't know what to tell you. Christian Ponder sucks. He's terrible.
Dude, he's horrible.
He's so bad.
Absolutely horrible. Adrian Peterson barely got off in this game. This game special teams cost you this game. Percy Harvin has a 105-yard kick return.
7 seconds into this game, you're down by a touchdown. My first note was holy special teams. Because you gave up 2 return touchdowns in the last game, and the first thing you do is give up an untouched kick return.
And then you start your third quarter off with Marcus Sherrills going 77 yards. And that was the offense did nothing in this game. The offense did not score any points. And Christian Ponder looked so pedestrian in this game. It was brutal.
I watched this game an hour ago, and I don't have many notes because my note was the team didn't show up. They just didn't. Nobody did. A lot of second and too longs. Some of them, and this is not the first time we've said this, this is at least the second or third game where it felt like second down and 10 was a luxury. It felt like if you could be throwing an incomplete pass on first down, you were thankful. Some of that was runs that went backwards. Some of that was penalties. Some of that was sacks. Matthew Stafford ran for his life that man has got to have an instinctual fear of the color purple because the Vikings have gotten that man on his back so many times in his career.
Can you see that second note? My second note reads, Lions O-line has so much trouble with the Minnesota D-line because Jared Allen, Everson Griffin, just everybody collapses in on Matt Stafford and just takes shots at this guy.
The whole game. Matthew Stafford, I just mentioned, if I were to give you a positive note, Stafford didn't throw a single touchdown in this game. Stafford was my only high note, and I don't care. I'm going to tell you right now, Stafford's my stud. And I don't think he played particularly special, but I don't think anyone showed up. Mikel LaShore couldn't run the ball. I don't think Calvin Johnson wasn't anything special. And you know what? No, Calvin Johnson, he had 3 drops on a comeback drive late in the game. He threw 20 incompletions, and half of them might have been drops. Brandon Pettigrew, useless again. I went from disappointed in Brandon Pettigrew to tired of his face in this game. I don't even remember a play that he had. I just remember he sucked, and so did everybody. I've got nothing productive to say about this game other than thank God Matthew Stafford exists.
This was their head coach. Damn, I can't remember. This was his first win against an NFC North team. Leslie Frazier. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So that was his first win against an NFC North team in 2 years. I mean, this team was so bad with Christian Ponder under center, and no Detroit Lions showed up, but maybe Matt Stafford and maybe my stud. And when I say maybe my stud, because I even wrote his name down and then I put a gigantic question mark because I was like, maybe? Because this game was so bad, dude. It was absolutely horrible.
The Lions outgained the Vikings 341 to 227.
Mm-hmm.
and they needed a late touchdown to make it a game. They scored a touchdown with, I think, 3 minutes left just to make it a game.
Can we talk about Bill Bentley? In my notes, I've got Bill Bentley. 28 is shit.
He had to play a huge first down. I do not remember. It was late in the game, definitely in the fourth quarter. He gave up a first down that I rewinded to check who it was because I thought it was Jonte Green. Probably thought it was Jonte Green back then too. So maybe I considered them the same player. Yeah, he got beat a lot in this game. I didn't pick out very many people by name because I thought everyone sucked. I guess one other name I'll give you I thought was okay was Ndamukong Suh. I'm gonna guess that's your stud because he had a couple plays. But yeah, no, Bill Bentley was garbage.
I thought this defense struggled with tackling, and it showed up again in this game, and it was on massive display. I mean, you talked about them missing Marcus Sherrill as he returns that punt. There were 7 missed tackles on just that one play alone. There were numerous times where wide receivers
Did you rewind it?
Adrian, what's that?
Did you rewind it?
So
did you make sure and count? Because
yes,
I didn't. When I watched it, they showed the replay. I thought it was 6, but that was like my ballpark estimate. So it was 7.
Yeah, dude,
I believe it.
This team couldn't bring anybody down. It was disgusting. This game made me so mad. Let me put it to you like this. When I watched this game, I had gone out for a birthday dinner. I had came home and I was feeling pretty good. I was probably about 6 drinks deep. And I was like, cool, let's sit down and watch this one. And by the time it was over, I was stone cold sober and I was pissed off. This game was brutal from top to bottom. I was angry.
I have like 4 notes and 2 of them are, I'm so sick of watching drops, and I hate this game. This is one of the worst games I've ever watched. Those were 2 of my notes. There's like I feel bad. I feel like I'm not doing my job here because I'm not giving you in-depth analysis. I will say, and I wrote this one down too, as one of my three of my 4 notes. I know Brandon Pettigrew had a lot of drops, but particularly, I think this was early on in the game. I think it was before they got their first field goal in the first quarter. Stafford took a hit to throw a touchdown to Calvin Johnson. He then dropped it. Now, in Calvin's defense, Calvin got pretty lit up in this one. You still like to see a guy like that catch it, but at least he took the hit. The following play, Stafford once again took a hit to throw the ball. Back-to-back plays, took a hit, put the ball in the hands of a receiver in the end zone. Brandon Pettigrew had the ball with 2 hands, and it looked like he was trying to spike it to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally, I wish it was video, so I could show you. Guy gets 2 hands on the ball and just slams it into the ground on 3rd down. And like, that's like, early on in the game, that's where I went from disappointment from the previous game to anger. Man, this game sucked.
It was, I want to rewind what you just said, because it's true. Just like the tone in your voice and just the disgust, this game makes you pissed off. This game leaves you so angry and so upset. And so I've been doing this thing after these games, right? Where I just kind of my assessment of what happened in this game, right? And what parts of the problem were, or what was really impressive about the game. And look, there were really no deep plays in this game. The offense felt like it was bottled up the entire game, and it felt like it was let down by the secondary and the special teams. The special teams in this game sucked. Whoever the special teams coordinator was, how he has a job on Monday, it would blow my mind. And we said it earlier in this podcast, I don't think he makes it through the bye week because next week is their bye week. This game was so frustrating because it felt like nobody showed up. It felt like nobody cared. And it's very rare that you can say that about Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson is usually your default stud because
he was so bad.
Game. Yeah. He plays every game so well. He was a complete disappointment in this game. Brandon Pettigrew,
he had 3 drops in their last offensive drive. He had at least 2.
He did. It was bad. This game was awful to watch. I think we're going to see how it plays out, but this might be the turning point in the season because this was a game that they had no business losing. And they had cuts in this game where you could see Matt Stafford sitting on the sideline and he just looked pissed and he looked befuddled.
He had a play late in the game. I think they ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive anyways, where The amount of times in this season I've watched him buy time with his feet only to have a wide receiver who was not ready was ridiculous. And I think it was actually to Joique Bell. He bought time, threw it to Joique Bell, and it wasn't a great throw, but I don't think Joique Bell was ready for it and didn't even try and grab it. Yeah, no, he looked like he was playing alone. I felt for Stafford watching this game. Mm-hmm. You have anything else you need to get into in this game?
No, who's your dud? Because I've got a couple different directions I could go with this.
Let's go stud first.
Okay. So
my stud,
Stafford.
I told you, it was Matthew
right?
Stafford. I thought Matthew Stafford, I would give him a B in this game, maybe a B+, but keep in mind, that's with the context of nobody else even showed up to take the test. So, you look like a hell of a student if you're the only one in the classroom.
I thought Mikel Leshore played a piss poor game. I thought Joique Bell was probably the only other guy who gave this team a little bit of a chance. I thought at certain points, Joique Bell looked like he was out there trying. You know, you said Matt Stafford was the only guy who showed up to take the test. I felt like Joique Bell was kind of dragging behind. But yeah, he did. He showed up late. But at least he came with a pencil. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so my dud, what I wrote down, and I will change it, I wrote down the other 52 players.
I like that.
And understand, like, neither of us have gone anything like that. Like, occasionally we might say, like, the special teams or the offensive line. I'm going to take Joique Bell out of the equation, and I'm going to take Ndamukong Suh out of the equation. Now, Suh got beat on some trap blocks, which were, like, very clearly his weakness, exposed by San Francisco last season. But he had some plays. He had one tackle in this game in particular where he was sitting on his ass and he grabbed Adrian Peterson's jersey and pulled him down. And I was just like Adrian Peterson is not like me or you, Stroz. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if the average NFL defensive lineman could pull me or you down while sitting down on the ground. But to pull Adrian Peterson down while you're already on the ground is incredible.
Ndamukong Suh was freakishly strong.
So I'm going to take Stafford out of the equation, Suh out of the equation, and Joique Bell out of the equation. The other 50 players on this roster, and every single person involved with special teams, from special teams coordinator down to the water boy, every single one of them was a dud in this game.
I have offense, I've got special teams, I've got secondary. I've just got groups of just units that just played so bad. But I'm going to go special teams because the special teams is the reason you lost this game. The opening kickoff, you give up 6 points, that turns into 7. In the third quarter, you give up another special teams. You give up a punt return where just about everybody on the field missed a tackle. And that puts you down even more. Special teams cost you this game, and it was hard to watch, and it was hard to stomach.
In 2 weeks, you gave up 40 points on single plays that should never happen. 2 kick returns, 2 punt returns, a ball that was taken straight out of, like, not a hard hit, just literally ripped out of Brandon Pettigrew's hands, and a touchdown where the man was hugging you to catch the ball, and you couldn't figure out where the ball was. 40 points in 2 games. This team should absolutely, undeniably, be a 3-1 football team. They were the better team in both of these last 2 games. If they're 3-1 going into the bye week with the only loss against the San Francisco team who, like, I'm not even going to use hindsight. We knew San Francisco lost in the conference championship last year and wins if it's not for a muffed punt. We knew that. Can you imagine the feeling after your first playoff appearance? Now you're 3-1 going into the bye week. Not just as fans, but as a team, I think you look at yourself differently.
It would have a completely different feeling. This season would feel, you'd feel like you're like, okay, cool. We're building upon what we had last year. And right now it feels like this was a team that bought into their hype last year and is just kind of trying to coast through.
This game sucks. I think rewatching this has been a lot of fun. Even the Tennessee game, I had my frustrations, but it was bearable. If I were to tell you to skip any game as far as rewatching, it would be this one. Out of any game we watch, it would be this one. It wouldn't even be close.
This game was probably the most frustrating.
Next week, the Lions have a bye week. Obviously, we're not doing anything with that. They go into Philadelphia, bounce back from the 3-game losing streak with a 26-23 win in overtime. Can't say I remember that. Then they lose at Chicago in a close, low-scoring one. I don't remember a whole lot the rest of the way. I don't remember either of those. But a 1-1 appearance next week. We don't got a lot of wins to enjoy this season, so take them while you can. You got anything before we wrap this up?
No, man, I'm hoping for something a little bit better. I don't really remember the Philadelphia game either. I think I might remember this Chicago game. I'm not sure though, so it'll be an interesting rewatch.
That's gonna do it. I'm sorry if we've depressed you. I depressed myself watching these, but you know, it's interesting to learn these things and see these players differently as we go through our rewatch. And who knows, maybe one day we'll get rewarded with the 2014 season.